Sarah Mitchell stood in her doorway at midnight, staring at the man she'd mourned for 3 years. Daniel Carter smiled at her like time had erased everything. Like abandonment was just a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over with confidence. Behind him stood a woman Sarah had never seen, holding a sleepy child who clutched Daniel's jacket. "This is my family now," Daniel said, stepping inside without asking permission. "You'll need to move your things out of the master bedroom tonight." Sarah didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for an explanation. Instead, she bent down slowly and picked up a hospital identification card that had slipped from Daniel's pocket. The name on it wasn't his. And in that moment, standing in the house she'd fought 3 years to keep, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She said absolutely nothing. If stories of quiet strength, strategic patience, and powerful justice speak to you, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what happens next. And drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from, because we want to see how far Sarah's story travels. Now, let's go back to where this all began. 3 years earlier, Sarah Mitchell's husband walked out for cigarettes and never came back. No note, no call, just gone. The police officer who took her missing persons report had kind eyes and zero hope. "Ma'am, most adults who disappear do so voluntarily. There's no sign of foul play here." Sarah wanted to argue. She wanted to show him their wedding photo, their mortgage papers, the vacation they'd planned for September. But his eyes said he'd heard it all before, and she was just another wife who didn't see it coming. So she stopped waiting for Daniel and started surviving without him. She took on every extra shift Morrison and Associates offered. She sold her car. She learned to negotiate with bank representatives who spoke in sympathetic voices while calculating foreclosure dates. Every mortgage payment felt like a war she was winning, 1 month at a time. She stopped crying somewhere around month 8. She stopped checking his social media around month 14. And by year 3, Daniel Carter had become someone she used to know. That was the woman he walked back in on, not the one he'd left behind. Now, standing in her entryway at midnight, Sarah watched Daniel move through her house like the past 3 years were just a weekend trip that ran long. "Why are you looking at me like I'm a ghost?" Daniel asked. "It's still my house, Sarah." "You've been gone for 3 years." "I know exactly how long it's been." His voice had an edge. "I had my reasons." "What reasons?" "Complicated ones." He waved his hand like he was dismissing a waiter. "We'll deal with that later. Right now, we need to handle logistics." The woman behind him stepped forward. Everything about her was calculated. Hair just so. Posture just right. Eyes already measuring the furniture like she was pricing it for resale. "I'm Vanessa Brooks," she said, shifting the sleeping child on her hip. "I know this is uncomfortable, but we should try to be mature about the situation." Sarah just looked at her. Vanessa's smile flickered. "We're all adults here." "Are we?" Sarah asked quietly. Daniel moved to the kitchen table and dropped a leather folder on it. The sound was too loud in the silent house. "I need you to cooperate," Daniel said. "I'm trying to be fair about this." "Fair about what?" He opened the folder. Sarah saw the papers immediately. Property documents. Living arrangement agreements. The kind of language lawyers use to make theft sound reasonable. "You'll move into the guest room tonight," Daniel said. "Just temporarily while we sort things out." "Tonight," Vanessa echoed. Sarah felt something rise in her chest, hot and fast and familiar. She'd felt it 1,000 times over 3 years. Arguing with bank officers, fighting with insurance companies, explaining to relatives why she couldn't just move on. But she'd learned something important during those arguments. Anger was what people expected. Silence was what scared them. So she just watched. She watched Daniel avoid looking at the corner where their wedding photo still hung. She watched Vanessa's hand tighten on the child when he stirred. She watched how Daniel had already made himself coffee, used her favorite mug, left grounds on the counter. He thought her silence meant agreement. "Look, I know the past 3 years were rough," Daniel said, his voice softer now. "But I didn't just abandon you. Things happened. Complicated things. I'll explain when you're ready to hear them."
I'm ready now.
"No," he shook his head. "You're emotional. We'll talk when you've calmed down." Sarah wasn't emotional. She was perfectly calm. But Daniel had always done this, told her how she felt before she could say it herself. That's when the hospital card fell out of his jacket. 1 second it was in his pocket, the next it was on the floor between them. Small. Plastic. Damning. Sarah bent down and picked it up before either of them could move. The photo was definitely Daniel. Same scar above his left eyebrow from college. Same crooked smile. But the name underneath said, Marcus Thompson. And the expiration date was over a year old. Daniel's whole body tensed. Just for a second, but Sarah saw it. "That's not mine," he said, too fast. "Must have gotten mixed up with my stuff." Sarah studied the photo, the scar, the smile, the ID number. "Right," she said, handing it back. "Must have." But something cold settled in her chest. 3 years gone. A hospital badge with a fake name. Papers already prepared for her to sign. This wasn't a reunion. This was something else entirely. "Ethan needs to sleep," Vanessa said, breaking the silence. "Which room is ours?" Daniel pointed down the hall without hesitation. "Master bedroom." And there it was. The bed Sarah had slept in alone for 1,000 nights. The room she'd fought the bank to keep. The space she'd paid for with double shifts and skipped meals. Claimed without a conversation.
Of course, Sarah heard herself say.
She went to the hall closet, pulled out a blanket and pillow, moved with deliberate calm. Daniel watched her like he was waiting for her to break, to cry or yell or beg. Vanessa watched her differently, carefully, like she was assessing a threat. As Sarah walked past the couch, little Ethan opened his eyes. For just a second, he looked right at her. His hand reached out and touched her sleeve. "Mama?" he whispered, still half asleep. Vanessa went rigid. "No, baby. I'm Mama." Daniel laughed it off. "He's confused. It's late." But Ethan kept looking at Sarah with those dark, curious eyes. And Sarah felt something crack inside her chest. Whatever game the adults were playing, this child was innocent. Later, alone on the couch with their footsteps moving overhead, Sarah didn't cry. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app, the joint account she'd kept active just in case Daniel came back or was declared dead for insurance purposes. She scrolled through the transactions. Her deposits. Her deposits. Her deposits. Then, 2 weeks ago, a withdrawal. $15,000. Sarah's hands went cold. The withdrawal was dated 2 weeks before Daniel showed up at her door. Before the midnight knock. Before the, "I'm back, and this is my family," speech. He'd accessed their account while she thought he was still missing. Sarah took a screenshot, then another. Then she went back 6 months. There, another withdrawal. $5,000. And another. And another. Small enough not to trigger alerts. Large enough to matter. He'd been taking money the whole time. She saved every screenshot to a new folder. Then she opened the security camera app she'd installed 2 years ago after the break-in down the street. The camera was hidden in the hallway's smoke detector. Daniel had never noticed it when he lived here, and he certainly didn't know about it now. She scrolled to earlier that evening. At 11:43 p.m., Daniel stepped out of the master bedroom. He looked around, then pulled out his phone and made a call. The audio was faint, but clear enough. "Yeah, I'm in, he said quietly. She's calmer than I expected. No, she won't fight. She never does. Just need to get her to sign the papers and we're set.
A pause. 2 weeks, maybe less. Then we can move forward with the sale. Sarah played it back, then again. Each time, the words landed harder. The sale. He wasn't here to reconcile. He was here to take the house. She saved the video file and texted it to herself for backup. Then she sat in the dark, listening to her husband laugh with another woman in the bedroom they'd once shared. Around 2 a.m., she heard small footsteps in the hallway. Ethan appeared at the edge of the living room, rubbing his eyes. "Can't sleep?" Sarah asked softly. He shook his head and climbed onto the couch without being invited. Just settled right against her side, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Mommy says I shouldn't talk to you," he whispered. "Why not?" "She says you're sad, and sad people are hard." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "Do I seem hard to you?" Ethan studied her face seriously. "No, you seem nice. Like my teacher." "What's your teacher's name?" "Miss Roberts. She has a dog named Butter." Sarah smiled despite everything. Butter's a good name for a dog. "Do you have a dog?" "No, but I always wanted one." "Me too," Ethan said, yawning. "Mama says dogs are too much work." He fell asleep mid-sentence, his head heavy against Sarah's arm. She sat very still, afraid to wake him. Afraid to examine too closely why this child felt safe with her, when his own mother had warned him away. 20 minutes later, Vanessa appeared in the doorway. For just a moment, Sarah saw something flicker across her face. Not anger. Fear. "I'll take him," Vanessa said, scooping Ethan up. She didn't say thank you, didn't acknowledge that Sarah had comforted her child. But as she turned away, Sarah caught a glimpse of papers on the dresser behind her. Legal documents, spreadsheets, highlighted sections. They were planning something. And Sarah was clearly the obstacle. The next morning, Sarah woke to Daniel already dressed, making phone calls in the living room. He was talking loud enough for her to hear. Wanted her to hear. "Yeah, I'm finally home," he said into the phone. "Been a nightmare, man. I got pushed out, but I'm handling it." No, she's not making it easy. But what else is new, right? Sarah sat up slowly, folded her blanket, and walked to the kitchen. Vanessa was already there, rearranging the cabinets. "Good morning," Vanessa said without looking at her. "I'm just organizing. Everything was kind of chaotic." Chaotic. Sarah had spent 3 years keeping this house running, and now it was chaotic. "Coffee's over there now," Vanessa said, pointing to a different cabinet. Made more sense. Sarah opened the cabinet where the coffee used to be. Empty. She opened the new location. Half her mugs were missing. "Where are my... I donated some things," Vanessa said cheerfully. "You had way too many cups for one person." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She poured coffee into a mug she didn't recognize and sat at the table. Daniel came in, still on his phone. "Yeah, I'll send you the address. Come by tomorrow, we'll catch up." He hung up and smiled at Sarah. "That was James from work. Well, my old work. I'm going back next week." "You have a job?" "Of course I have a job," he laughed. "What, you think I've been living under a bridge?" Sarah wanted to ask where he'd been living. Wanted to ask about the name Marcus Thompson. Wanted to demand answers. But she'd learned patience the hard way. "That's good," she said simply. Daniel frowned. "That's it? That's all you have to say?" "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Maybe ask how I'm doing? Show some interest in where I've been?" Sarah took a slow sip of coffee. "Where have you been, Daniel?" He waved his hand. "Here and there, figuring things out. It's complicated." "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." His voice had an edge now. "Look,
I'm trying to be patient with you, but this attitude isn't helping anyone. What attitude? This, he gestured at her. This cold, suspicious thing you're doing. I came back. I'm trying to make things work. The least you could do is meet me halfway. Sarah set her coffee down carefully. You came back with another woman and a child and told me to move out of my own bedroom. What exactly is halfway? Vanessa stood up abruptly. See, this is what I told you, Daniel. She's not ready to be reasonable. I'm being perfectly reasonable, Sarah said. No, Vanessa shot back. You're being petty. We're trying to blend a family here, and you're acting like we're the enemy. You showed up at midnight and started rearranging my house. Our house, Daniel corrected. It's still half mine, Sarah. You don't get to act like you're the only one with rights here. Sarah felt something sharp in her chest. I'm the one who kept this house. I'm the one who paid the mortgage for 3 years while you were gone. I'm the one who fought the bank, negotiated the interest rate, kept the lights on. Me. Alone. Daniel's face hardened. And I'm grateful for that. But let's not pretend you're some kind of hero. You did what anyone would do. You survived. Congratulations. The words landed like slaps. Vanessa jumped in. Daniel's been through a lot, Sarah. Maybe if you stopped being so focused on yourself, you'd see that. Sarah stood up slowly. I think I need some air. Running away? Daniel called after her. That's mature. Sarah grabbed her keys and walked out. She drove to the only place that felt safe anymore. Morrison and Associates, the architecture firm where she'd worked for 8 years. The office wouldn't open for another hour, but Sarah had a key. She let herself in, sat at her desk, and just breathed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel's cousin, Marcus. Hey, Daniel said you're having trouble adjusting to him being back. Just wanted to check in. You doing okay? Sarah stared at the message. Daniel was already spreading his version of events, making her sound unstable, difficult, the problem. Another text came in, this one from Daniel's sister. Her D is home. So happy for you both. He says it's been a rough transition. Hang in there. Rough transition. Like he'd been on a business trip instead of vanished for 3 years. Sarah's work phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but the caller ID showed Gloria Martinez from her building. Sarah, it's Gloria. You have a minute? Yeah, what's up? Your husband came by my office this morning. Asked about access logs and security footage. Sarah's stomach dropped. What did you tell him? Nothing. Told him I'd need a formal request in writing. But Sarah, he seemed real interested in what footage we keep and for how long. Thanks for the heads up, Gloria. There's something else. Gloria's voice dropped. I pulled some old records after we talked yesterday. That contractor key I mentioned? It wasn't just used once. It was used 6 times over the past year. And twice, the security camera caught someone who wasn't your husband. Who? A woman. Brown hair, about 5'6". I compared it to the woman I saw with him yesterday. Sarah, it's the same person. That Vanessa woman was accessing your building months before your husband came back. Sarah closed her eyes. Can you email me those images? Already sent them. Check your personal email, not your work one. Gloria, I owe you. You don't owe me anything. You were good to my daughter when she needed work references. I'm just returning the favor. But Sarah, be careful. Whatever they're planning, they've been planning it for a while. Sarah hung up and opened her personal email on her phone. There they were. 6 images, time-stamped. Vanessa Brooks entering Sarah's building. Vanessa Brooks using a contractor key. Vanessa Brooks going to the vacant unit 2 floors down. The dates ranged from 8 months ago to 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks before Daniel showed up claiming he was finally home. Sarah forwarded the images to herself 3 different ways, then opened a new browser window. She typed in the search bar, "Divorce Attorneys, Portland, Oregon." The first result was Pierce and Associates. Hannah Pierce, lead attorney. Specializes in high-conflict divorce, property disputes, and fraud cases. Sarah clicked the phone number. A receptionist answered on the second ring. "Pierce and Associates, how may I help you?" "I need to speak with Hannah Pierce. It's urgent." "Ms. Pierce is with a client right now. Can I take your name and number?" "Sarah Mitchell, and please, tell her it's about a case involving identity fraud and potential property theft. I have documentation." There was a pause. "Hold, please." Less than a minute later, a woman's voice came on the line, sharp, direct, no nonsense. "This is Hannah Pierce. You said something about identity fraud?" "My husband disappeared 3 years ago. He came back 2 days ago with another woman and a child. He's already accessed our joint bank account. He has papers he wants me to sign, and I just found out he's been using a fake name. I have security footage, bank records, and photos of his accomplice entering my building before he came back." Silence. Then, "How soon can you come to my office?" "I can be there in 20 minutes. "Make it 15. And Sarah, don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Don't even have a conversation with him until after we talk." "Understood. And Sarah, one more thing." "Yes?" "You did the right thing calling me. Most people wait until it's too late. You're still in control of this situation. Let's keep it that way." Sarah drove to Hannah Pierce's office in a high-rise downtown. The lobby was all glass and steel, the kind of place that announced success before you even stepped inside. Hannah Pierce was exactly what Sarah expected. Mid-40s, sharp suit, eyes that saw through excuses straight to the truth. They sat in a conference room that overlooked the city. Sarah spread out everything she had. The bank statements, the security photos, the video of Daniel's phone call, the hospital ID with the name Marcus Thompson. Hannah reviewed each item methodically, making notes, saying nothing. Finally, she looked up. "Your husband isn't just hiding something," Hannah said. "He's running a con, and you're the mark." Sarah felt the words settle into her bones. "What do I do?" Hannah leaned back. "First, we secure your assets. I'm going to draft an emergency motion to freeze the joint accounts. Second, we document everything, every conversation, every demand, every threat. Third, we investigate. I have a private investigator on retainer. His name is Darius Cole. He's expensive, but he's worth it. If your husband has been living under another identity, Darius will find out why." "How long will this take?" "Depends on how smart your husband is. But Sarah, I'm going to tell you something most attorneys won't. Men like Daniel don't stop because you ask nicely. They stop because you make it legally and financially impossible for them to continue. Are you prepared to do that?" Sarah thought about the 3 years she'd spent surviving alone, the double shifts, the bus rides in winter, the nights she'd cried herself to sleep wondering if she'd ever feel safe again. "Yes," she said. "I'm prepared." Hannah smiled for the first time. "Good, because he's about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating quiet women." When Sarah got home that afternoon, Daniel was pacing the living room on the phone again. "I told you to handle it," he hissed into the phone. "No, she can't know yet. Just keep everything quiet until after she signs." He froze when he saw Sarah. "I'll call you back," he said, hanging up quickly. "Who was that?" Sarah asked. "Nobody, just work stuff." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Where were you?" "Out." "Out where?" "Just driving. Needed to think." Daniel studied her face. "You seem different." Different how? I don't know. Calmer, maybe? It's weird. Sarah set her purse down. I've had 3 years to get used to being alone, Daniel. Calm is all I have left. He didn't like that answer. She could see it in the way his jaw tightened. We need to talk about those papers, he said. What papers? The living arrangement agreement. I need you to sign it. I'm not signing anything until I have a lawyer review it. Daniel's face changed. The smile vanished. You got a lawyer? I'm considering it. Jesus Christ, Sarah! He ran his hand through his hair. Why do you have to make everything so difficult? I'm trying to be fair here, and you're acting like I'm the enemy. Are you? What? The enemy. Are you? He stared at her. That's a hell of a thing to ask your husband. You weren't my husband for 3 years. You were just gone. Now you're back with demands and papers and another woman sleeping in my bed. So yes, Daniel, I'm asking. Are you my enemy? The silence between them felt like a living thing. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice low and controlled. You have no idea what you're starting. Neither do you. He stepped closer. You think a lawyer scares me? You think I didn't prepare for this? Prepare for what, exactly? His eyes went cold. For you being difficult. For you playing victim. For you trying to take what's mine. I'm not taking anything. I'm protecting what I kept alive while you were busy playing house with someone else. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression. This conversation isn't over, he said, walking toward the bedroom. Sarah stood in the living room, her heart pounding but her hands steady. She'd drawn a line, and Daniel had just shown her exactly who he was, when someone dared to draw one. That night, after the house went quiet, Sarah sat on the couch with her laptop. She couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing, assembling pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed 2 days ago. She opened a new search. Marcus Thompson Logistics, Portland. The results were sparse. A LinkedIn profile that looked abandoned. A few mentions in company newsletters. And then, buried on page 3 of the search results, a small news article from 18 months ago. Local man injured in warehouse accident. Dispute over insurance claims. Sarah clicked the link. The article was brief. A worker at Summit Logistics had been injured. The company disputed the severity of the injury. The worker filed a claim. The case was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. No name was listed. But the date matched the expiration date on the hospital ID. And Summit Logistics was real. Sarah found their website, their employee portal, their HR contact information. She took screenshots of everything. Then, her phone buzzed with an email from Darius Cole, the private investigator Hannah had mentioned. Ms. Mitchell, Hannah Pierce asked me to reach out. I've started preliminary research based on the information you provided. I'll have a full report within 48 hours, but I wanted to give you a heads up. The name Marcus Thompson appears in multiple databases associated with insurance claims, short-term rentals, and employment records that don't match your husband's known timeline. This suggests a sustained alternate identity. I'll have specifics soon. In the meantime, document everything. And I mean everything. DC. Sarah read the email twice, then opened a new document on her laptop. She titled it Timeline and started writing. 3 years ago, Daniel disappears. 18 months ago, Marcus Thompson insurance claim. 14 months ago, Daniel's access card used at building. 8 months ago, Vanessa Brooks enters building with contractor key. 3 weeks ago, $15,000 withdrawal from joint account. 2 days ago, Daniel returns with Vanessa and Ethan. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. A sound made her look up. Ethan stood in the hallway again, watching her. "Can't sleep again?" Sarah whispered. He shook his head and climbed onto the couch, curling against her side like he had the night before. "Does your mama know you're out here?" Sarah asked gently. "She's asleep. She takes medicine that makes her sleep really hard." Sarah stroked his hair absently. "What about your dad? Does he take medicine too?" "Daniel's not my dad." Sarah went very still. "What?" "He's not my dad," Ethan repeated, like it was obvious. "Mama says I should call him that, but he's not. My real dad is in California. Mama says we can't see him anymore because he wasn't nice." Sarah's mind raced. "How long have you known Daniel?" Ethan yawned. "I don't know. A long time, I think. He came to our apartment and played trucks with me. Then Mama said we were moving to a big house and I'd have my own room." "When did she say that?" "Before Christmas. She showed me pictures." Before Christmas. That was 3 months ago. 3 months before Daniel knocked on Sarah's door. "Ethan, do you remember the pictures she showed you?" "Uh-huh. It had a red door and flowers in the front." Sarah's house had a red door, and flowers she'd planted 2 springs ago. Her blood went cold. "Ethan, I need you to do something for me, okay? I need you to go back to bed now, and I need you to not tell your mama or Daniel that we talked. Can you do that?" He nodded sleepily. "Are you sad again?" "No, honey, I'm not sad. I'm just thinking." "Thinking is good. My teacher says thinking helps us make good choices. Your teacher is very smart." Sarah walked him back to the bedroom and watched him climb into the bed next to Vanessa, who didn't stir. Then she went back to the living room and added a new line to her timeline. 3 months ago, Vanessa showed Ethan pictures of Sarah's house. They'd been planning this. Not for weeks, for months, maybe longer. Sarah opened her email and started typing to Hannah Pierce. "Hannah, something just came to light. Vanessa showed the child pictures of my house 3 months ago, before Daniel came back. I think they've been planning this together for at least that long. Also, the child just told me Daniel isn't his biological father. I don't know if that matters legally, but it feels important. What's our next move?" She hit send and sat back, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere above her, Daniel slept in her bed with another woman, thinking he'd won, thinking Sarah would sign his papers and fade quietly into the background like she had during their marriage. But Daniel had made one critical mistake. He'd given her 3 years to learn how to fight, and now that she knew what she was fighting for, there wasn't a chance in hell she was backing down. Her phone lit up with a response from Hannah. "That's called premeditation. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we go on offense." Sarah closed her laptop and finally let herself smile. Tomorrow, Daniel Carter was going to learn that the woman he'd left behind no longer existed. And the woman who'd replaced her didn't break. She adapted. She planned. And she won. Sarah woke to the sound of Daniel already on the phone downstairs. His voice carried up through the vents, confident and loud, like he was making sure she heard every word. "Yeah, I'm handling it. She's being difficult, but that's nothing new. I've got it under control." She checked her phone. 6:47 a.m. A text from Hannah Pierce was waiting. "Darius has preliminary intel. Can you meet at 9? Bring everything." Sarah typed back quickly. "I'll be there." She got dressed in the guest room, choosing clothes carefully. Not too formal, not too casual. Nothing that looked like she was trying to prove something. By the time she came downstairs, Daniel had set himself up at the kitchen table like it was his office, laptop open, coffee mug strategically placed on papers Sarah recognized as her mortgage documents. "We need to talk," Daniel said without looking up. About what? About your attitude yesterday. About the lawyer comment. Sarah poured herself coffee. I didn't make a comment. I said I was considering getting legal advice. Same thing. Daniel closed his laptop. And it's a problem, Sarah. We're supposed to be working together here. Working together on what, exactly? On transitioning this situation into something stable. For everyone. Vanessa appeared in the doorway, Ethan on her hip. The boy looked tired. Shadows under his eyes Sarah hadn't noticed before. Morning, Vanessa said brightly. Daniel and I were thinking we should have a family dinner tonight. Really clear the air, you know? Sarah looked at her. Family dinner. Right.
Just us, and maybe a few people from Daniel's side. His sister, maybe his mom. Help everyone understand the new dynamic. The new dynamic, where I'm a guest in my own house. Daniel stood up fast, his chair scraping against the floor. See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. You twist everything into some victim narrative instead of just accepting reality. What reality is that? That I'm back, that I have rights here, that you don't get to make unilateral decisions anymore. Sarah set her mug down carefully. You were gone for 3 years, Daniel. Every decision I made was unilateral because there was nobody else here to make them with. And I'm grateful you kept things going, Daniel said, his voice shifting to something softer, more manipulative. But that phase is over now. We're moving into a partnership phase. That means compromise. That means cooperation. That means signing papers I haven't read. His jaw tightened. Those papers are standard living arrangement documents. You're acting like I'm trying to steal from you. Are you? The silence that followed felt dangerous. Vanessa shifted Ethan to her other hip, her eyes darting between them. Finally, Daniel smiled. I think you need to take a step back and really examine why you're being so hostile. Maybe talk to someone about it, a therapist or something. Sarah felt the trap closing. The implication was clear. Get help or be labeled unreasonable. She'd seen this move before in their marriage, back when Daniel used her anxiety against her during arguments. I'll think about it, she said neutrally. Good. Daniel picked up his phone. The dinner's at 6. Try to be pleasant. Sarah grabbed her purse and keys. I have errands. Where are you going? Out. That's not an answer. She looked at him directly. It's the only one you're getting. She left before he could respond. Darius Cole's office was in an older building downtown, the kind with character that newer developments lacked. The directory listed him on the 3rd floor. No receptionist, just a door with his name on frosted glass. Sarah knocked once and heard, "It's open." Darius was younger than she expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the kind of stillness that came from years of watching people lie. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. You're punctual, he said. I like that. Hannah said you have information. I have more than information. I have a timeline that doesn't make sense, which usually means someone's hiding something worth finding. He slid a folder across his desk. Marcus Thompson. That's the name on the hospital badge, right? Yes. Marcus Thompson worked at Summit Logistics for 18 months. Injury on the job, filed a disability claim, got a settlement. But here's what's interesting. He pulled out a bank statement. The settlement was deposited into an account under that name, but the account was opened using your husband's Social Security number. Sarah stared at the numbers. He used his real Social Security number with a fake name? Sloppy. Or arrogant. Maybe both. Darius pulled out more papers. There's more. The rental history under Marcus Thompson shows 3 different addresses over 2 years. Short-term leases, all paid in cash. And one of those addresses? He pointed to a highlighted line. Is 2 blocks from your building. He was living 2 blocks away?
For 6 months. Left about 8 months ago, right around the time the insurance settlement came through. Sarah's hands felt cold. What else? The woman, Vanessa Brooks. She's got a history too. Darius opened another file. 2 previous relationships, both ending in messy property disputes. One guy she lived with for 8 months claims she systematically moved her name onto his accounts, then disappeared with $50,000. He didn't pursue charges because he couldn't prove intent. She's done this before. Looking that way. And the kid, Ethan. Birth certificate was filed late, amended twice. The first version listed no father. The second listed a John Brooks from Sacramento. The third, filed 6 months ago, lists Daniel Carter. Sarah felt like the room was tilting. 3 different fathers on one birth certificate? Technically legal if you claim errors, but it raises questions. Big ones. Like whether Daniel is actually the father. Darius nodded. That's the obvious question. But there's another one. Why amend it specifically 6 months ago, right when the insurance settlement would have been processed? Sarah understood immediately. Because a dependent increases the payout. Exactly. So either your husband knew about this kid all along and hid it, or Vanessa found him and convinced him he was the father to run a bigger con. Either way, that kid is a tool, not a son. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, Darius was watching her carefully. "You're not surprised," he said. "I'm not. I'm angry." "Good. Anger means you're ready to fight. Hannah said you're steady under pressure. I believe her now. What do we do next?" "Next, I keep digging. I want to know where every dollar went, who else is involved, and what the end game is. You keep doing what you're doing. Stay calm. Don't confront. Document everything. And Sarah," he leaned forward, "if he makes any threats, especially about the kid or your mental health, you record it. Washington's a 2-party consent state, but there are exceptions for protecting yourself. We'll deal with admissibility later. Right now, we gather ammunition." Sarah left Darius's office with the folder in her bag and a new clarity in her chest. Daniel wasn't just a bad husband. He was a criminal. And Vanessa wasn't just a mistress. She was an accomplice. When Sarah got home, the house was already full of people. Daniel had moved the dinner up without telling her. His sister Amy was in the living room, his mother Margaret in the kitchen with Vanessa, and 2 people Sarah didn't recognize sat on her couch like they belonged there. "There she is," Daniel said loudly when Sarah walked in. "We were wondering when you'd show up." "You said 6. It's 4:30. "Plans changed. Thought we'd get started early." He smiled at the room. "Sarah's been under a lot of stress lately. She's not always tracking time like she used to." The implication hung in the air. Sarah saw Amy glance at her with concern, saw Margaret whisper something to Vanessa. "I'm tracking time fine," Sarah said evenly. "I was at an appointment." "What kind of appointment?" Daniel asked. "Personal." "See, this is what I mean," Daniel said to the room, shaking his head. "Everything's secretive now. Everything's defensive. I'm trying to build bridges here, and she's building walls." Amy stood up and came over. "Sarah, are you okay? You look tired." "I'm fine." "Daniel said you've been having trouble sleeping, that you've been really anxious since he got back." Sarah looked at Daniel, who was watching her with false concern. He'd set this up deliberately, invited people over early to catch her off guard, then framed her absence as instability. "I sleep fine," Sarah said. "What I'm having trouble with is people rearranging my life without asking." Margaret came out of the kitchen. "Sarah, honey, nobody's trying to rearrange anything. We're just trying to help. This is a big adjustment for everyone." "Is it?" Sarah looked around the room. Because it seems like everyone's already adjusted, except me. That's not fair, Vanessa said softly from the kitchen doorway. We're all trying really hard here. Are you? Sarah heard her voice rising slightly and forced herself to breathe. You showed up at my house, rearranged my cabinets, donated my belongings, and told me where I can sleep. That's trying hard? Sarah, Daniel said, his voice sharp now. You're embarrassing yourself. No, Sarah said quietly. I'm stating facts. Margaret looked between them, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe we should all sit down and talk about this calmly. Great idea, Daniel said. He gestured to the dining room table, where Vanessa had already set out plates. Let's eat and really clear the air. That's what family does. They sat. Sarah found herself at one end of the table, with Daniel at the other, like some twisted parody of a married couple hosting dinner. Vanessa sat to Daniel's right, with Ethan on her lap. Amy and Margaret flanked Sarah, close enough that she felt boxed in. So, Amy said carefully, Daniel told us about the living arrangement. I have to say, Sarah, I think you're being really mature about this. Sarah looked at her. Mature about what? About Daniel coming home with Vanessa and Ethan. I mean, it's not ideal, but you're handling it gracefully. Am I? Well, I mean, you haven't kicked him out or anything. That shows growth. Sarah set her fork down slowly. Amy, he's been gone for 3 years. He came back at midnight with a woman and child I've never met and told me to move out of my bedroom. Growth would be me not calling the police. The table went quiet. Daniel laughed it off. She's joking. Sarah has a dark sense of humor sometimes. I'm not joking. Margaret reached over and patted Sarah's hand. Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but families work through difficult things. That's what commitment means. Commitment, Sarah repeated. Where was commitment for 3 years? That's not fair, Daniel said. You don't know what I was going through. Then tell me. It's complicated. You keep saying that. Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression. Excuse me. He stood and walked toward the hallway. Sarah watched him go. Through the archway, she could see him answering the call, his voice too low to hear, but his posture tense. Vanessa stood up suddenly. Ethan needs to lie down. He's been coughing again. Is he sick? Margaret asked. Just a cold, Vanessa said quickly. Too quickly. But Sarah heard it then. The wet rattled in Ethan's chest as he breathed. That wasn't a cold. That sounds like more than a cold, Sarah said. It's nothing, Vanessa insisted. He gets like this sometimes. How often is sometimes? I don't know, Sarah. I'm his mother. I think I know when my son needs a doctor. Does he have asthma? Vanessa's face went blank for just a second. No. Then why do I remember seeing an albuterol prescription in your bag? The table went very still. Amy and Margaret were watching now, confused. I don't know what you're talking about, Vanessa said. The prescription bottle, blue label. I saw it when you left your bag open on the counter yesterday. Vanessa picked Ethan up and held him tighter. You were going through my things? I was walking past. It was sitting right on top. This is ridiculous, Vanessa said. Daniel? But Daniel was still in the hallway, his voice rising slightly as whoever he was talking to clearly wasn't giving him the answer he wanted. Ethan coughed again, harder this time. His breathing got tighter. He needs his inhaler, Sarah said. He doesn't have an inhaler, Vanessa snapped. Then he needs to go to the hospital. He needs to lie down. Vanessa started toward the stairs, but Ethan was wheezing now, his little chest working too hard. Margaret stood up. Vanessa, maybe Sarah's right. That doesn't sound good. I said he's fine, Vanessa said, but her voice cracked with panic. Daniel came back in, still distracted by whatever the call had been about. "What's going on?" "Ethan needs medical attention," Sarah said. "He's fine," Vanessa and Daniel said at the same time. But Ethan wasn't fine. His lips were starting to turn slightly blue at the edges, and the wheezing sound was getting worse. Sarah grabbed her phone and dialed 911.
"I have a child in respiratory distress."
"What are you doing?" Daniel lunged for the phone, but Sarah stepped back. She gave the dispatcher her address and Ethan's symptoms, then hung up. "They're coming," Sarah said. "And when they get here, you're going to explain to them why a child with breathing problems doesn't have his medication." Vanessa's face went white. "You had no right. He couldn't breathe. He was fine. He was turning blue." The paramedics arrived 6 minutes later. By then, Ethan was crying, which actually helped his breathing a little, but terrified Vanessa into near hysteria. They took him and Vanessa in the ambulance. Daniel followed in his car without a word to Sarah. The house emptied fast after that. Amy and Margaret left with worried backward glances, and the strangers Sarah hadn't even been introduced to disappeared like smoke. Sarah sat alone at the table, surrounded by half-eaten food, and wondered what she'd just done. She'd helped a child. That was good. But she'd also just escalated a war she wasn't sure she could win. Her phone rang. Hannah Pierce. "I'm at the ER," Hannah said, without preamble. "How did you know to call this in?" "Wait, you're there?" "I have a source at the hospital. They flagged Ethan Carter's intake for me because of the inconsistencies in his medical records. Sarah, the prescription bottles Vanessa brought show 3 different last names. The insurance information doesn't match the birth certificate. And when they asked for his pediatrician, she couldn't name one." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What does that mean?" "It means either she's been avoiding proper medical care, or she's been hiding him from someone. Maybe both. Child Services is already involved. This just became a custody case." "I didn't mean to." "You did the right thing," Hannah cut her off. "A child in distress is always the right call. But Sarah, this is going to get uglier now. They're going to paint you as interfering, as jealous, as unstable. Are you ready for that?" Sarah thought about the dinner, the performance, the setup. "They've already started." "Then we go harder. Darius found something else. I'm sending it to you now. Read it tonight. And Sarah, don't be alone in that house anymore. Can you stay somewhere else?" "This is my house." "I know, but right now possession isn't the same as safety. Think about it." Hannah hung up. Sarah's email pinged with a new message. Subject line: Insurance fraud evidence. She opened it and started reading. By the time she finished, her hands were shaking not with fear, but with cold, focused rage. Daniel and Vanessa hadn't just been planning to take her house. They'd been planning to take her house, claim her assets, and disappear. The insurance fraud alone was enough for criminal charges. The birth certificate tampering added forgery. And now, with medical neglect in the picture, they were looking at felony territory. Sarah forwarded the email to 3 different locations, then called her father. "Dad, I need to tell you something." Robert Mitchell listened without interrupting as Sarah explained everything. When she finished, there was a long pause. "Come home," he said finally. "Pack a bag and come here tonight." "Dad, I can't leave the house. If I do, he'll change the locks." "He can't change the locks on a house he doesn't own. The deed has both our names." "No, Sarah, it doesn't." She froze. "What?" "Your mother and I set up a trust when we gave you the down payment. The house has always been in your name alone, held in trust to protect it from exactly this kind of situation. Daniel never had legal ownership. He just lived there." Sarah's vision blurred. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you never needed to know until now. And sweetheart, now you need to know. That house is yours. He can't take it. He can't sell it. He can't sign anything about it. All he can do is leave. How do I prove that? I'm sending you the trust documents tonight, and I'm calling my attorney in the morning. If Daniel Carter thinks he can intimidate my daughter, he's about to learn what a very expensive mistake looks like. Sarah ended the call and sat in her quiet house, listening to it breathe around her. For 3 years, this place had been a burden she carried alone. Now, it was a weapon, and she finally knew how to use it. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you won tonight? You just made everything worse. Ask your husband about the insurance policy. Ask him who the beneficiary is." Sarah stared at the message. Who was texting her? And what insurance policy? Another text came through. "He took out life insurance on you 2 years ago. Check your mail from last summer. The confirmation letter." Sarah's blood went cold. Life insurance. On her. While he was supposedly missing. She went to the filing cabinet where she kept old mail and started digging. Bills, statements, junk mail. Then, buried in a stack from August, she found it. A letter from Pacific Life Insurance, confirming coverage for Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell. $300,000. Beneficiary, Daniel Marcus Carter. The letter was dated 14 months ago, right around the time Daniel's access card had been used in the building. He'd been here. He'd opened her mail. He'd taken out a life insurance policy on her without her knowledge or signature. And the beneficiary was listed with his middle name as Marcus, the same name he'd used for his fake identity. Sarah took photos of everything and sent them to Hannah with a single message. "He was planning to kill me." The response came back immediately. "Get out of that house right now." But before Sarah could move, she heard the front door open. Daniel was back, and from the sound of his footsteps, he was furious. Sarah shoved the insurance documents into her pocket and stood up just as Daniel slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the frame. His face was twisted with rage, all pretense of charm gone. "What the hell did you do?" he shouted. Sarah's hand closed around her phone in her pocket, finger finding the record button by feel. "I called 911 for a child who couldn't breathe. You had no right. He's not your kid. You don't make medical decisions for him." Someone had to. He was turning blue. Daniel crossed the room fast, and Sarah's body tensed, but he stopped just short of her personal space. Close enough to intimidate, not close enough to justify calling it assault. "You're trying to sabotage this," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're trying to make us look bad. You're doing that yourself." "Don't," he pointed a finger at her face. "Don't act like you're the victim here. You called the paramedics to humiliate us in front of my family. I called because a child needed help. If that humiliates you, maybe ask yourself why." Daniel's jaw worked. "Child Services is involved now. Did you know that? They're asking questions about his medical history, his living situation, his care. You just opened a can of worms that didn't need opening." If the worms were there, they needed opening. "Jesus Christ!" Daniel exploded. "When did you become this person? This cold, vindictive—" "When you disappeared for 3 years and came back with a life insurance policy on me." The words dropped between them like a bomb. Daniel went very still. "What?" Sarah pulled the letter from her pocket and held it up. "Pacific Life Insurance, $300,000. Beneficiary, Daniel Marcus Carter. Dated 14 months ago. Want to explain that?" The color drained from his face. "Where did you get that?" "From my mail, my filing cabinet, my house." She stepped closer to him now, her fear evaporating into cold fury. "You opened my mail. You forged my signature on an insurance application. You listed yourself as beneficiary using the same fake name you worked under. Marcus! And you did all of this while I thought you were missing. I can explain. Then explain. Right now. Daniel's eyes darted toward the door like he was calculating whether he could leave. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you took out life insurance on me without my knowledge or consent while using a false identity. What else could it possibly look like? It was just in case, he said, his voice shifting to something pleading. In case something happened to you while I was gone. I wanted to make sure. Make sure what? That you'd profit if I died? Sarah's voice was shaky now, but not with fear, with rage. You weren't here. You were living 2 blocks away under a fake name with another woman, and you took out a policy on my life. Do you understand how that sounds? You're twisting it. I'm stating facts. She pulled out her phone and showed him the screen. And I'm recording this conversation, so choose your next words carefully. Daniel stared at the phone, then at her. Something shifted in his expression. The anger dissolved into calculation. You're not going to use that, he said quietly. Watch me. Washington's a 2-party consent state. That recording's illegal. Not if I feel threatened. Not if I'm protecting myself. Sarah held his gaze. Do I feel threatened, Daniel? Standing here alone with a man who took out life insurance on me without my knowledge? I never threatened you. You came back here with a plan to take my house. You accessed our accounts. You tried to get me to sign documents I hadn't read. And you insured my life for $300,000 while living under a fake name. She paused. How is that not a threat? The front door opened again, and Vanessa rushed in, mascara streaked, eyes wild. They're keeping him overnight, she said, her voice breaking. They said his oxygen levels were too low. They're running tests. And Daniel, they're asking questions about his vaccination records, his medical history, his... She stopped when she saw Sarah. Why is she still here? Because it's my house, Sarah said. She knows, Daniel said quietly. Vanessa's face went white. Knows what? About the insurance. Oh, God. Vanessa sank onto the couch. Oh, God, Daniel, you said she'd never find it. You said you buried it. I did, Daniel snapped. She went through her files. My files, Sarah corrected. In my house. Vanessa looked up at Sarah with something like desperation. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was just supposed to be there in case, in case something happened naturally. Naturally, Sarah repeated. The word tasted like poison. I didn't mean it like that, Vanessa said quickly. How did you mean it? Vanessa looked at Daniel, who shook his head sharply. But Vanessa was fracturing. Sarah could see it. The careful polish was cracking under pressure. We needed the money, Vanessa said. For Ethan, for his medical bills. Daniel said you had a heart condition, that you could go any time, that it was just being prepared. I don't have a heart condition, Sarah said. Vanessa blinked. What? I don't have a heart condition. I've never had a heart condition. My last physical was perfect. Vanessa turned slowly to look at Daniel. You said she was sick. She is, Daniel said. She's been depressed, anxious. That's not a heart condition, Vanessa said, her voice rising. That's not the same thing at all. Daniel, you said she could die naturally. You said we were just being smart. We are being smart. No, Vanessa stood up. No, this is something else. This is something you didn't tell me. Vanessa, shut up. Don't tell me to shut up. My son is in the hospital because of your plan. Child Services is investigating me because you said this would work. And now I find out you lied about her being sick? I didn't lie, Daniel said. I simplified. You told me she had a heart defect. You showed me medical papers. Sarah's blood went cold. What medical papers? Vanessa looked at her. He had papers from a cardiologist. Reports about a valve problem. He said you didn't know how serious it was. that you were in denial. Those were fake, Sarah said. No, Vanessa whispered, but her eyes were filling with understanding. Oh no. Oh God, they were fake. Vanessa, stop talking, Daniel ordered. You forged medical records? Vanessa's voice cracked. You forged documents to convince me she was dying anyway? What were you planning to do, Daniel? What was I helping you do? Daniel grabbed Vanessa's arm. You need to calm down right now. Don't touch me, she yanked away. Don't you dare touch me. Sarah's phone was still recording. She held it steady, capturing every word. You used me, Vanessa said to Daniel. You used my son. You told me we were making a family, and you were planning what? What were you planning? I was planning to take care of us, Daniel said. That's all. Just take care of us. By killing her? Vanessa screamed. The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah felt her hands go numb. Daniel's face showed nothing. No denial, no shock. Just cold silence. Get out, Sarah said quietly. Sarah, Daniel started. Get out of my house right now or I'm calling the police. You don't want to do that, Daniel said. Why? Because they'll find out about the insurance fraud? The forged medical records? The identity theft? Sarah's voice was steady now, almost calm. Or because they'll start wondering if you had plans to make that insurance policy pay out. You have no proof of any plan, Daniel said. I have recordings. I have documents. I have witnesses who heard you talking about timelines and sales and getting me to sign papers. She looked at Vanessa. And now I have someone who knows you forged medical records to convince her I was dying. Vanessa was shaking. I want a lawyer. Smart, Sarah said. You're going to need one. This is insane, Daniel said. You're making something out of nothing. That insurance policy was standard. The medical papers were just copies from an old doctor visit. You're connecting dots that don't exist. Then you won't mind explaining it to the police. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed. Daniel lunged for it, but Sarah was already moving toward the door. He grabbed her wrist, and she felt the pressure of his fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. Don't, he said. You're assaulting me, Sarah said clearly, her voice loud enough for the 911 operator to hear. You're hurting me, and I want you to leave. Daniel let go, like her skin had burned him. The operator's voice came through the phone, asking if she was safe. My husband is in my house against my wishes, Sarah said. He just physically grabbed me. I need police assistance. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? Yes. Daniel backed away, hands up. I didn't hurt you. I barely touched you. There will be bruises, Sarah said. And there would be. She could already feel her wrist throbbing. The operator said units were on the way. Sarah kept the line open, kept the phone recording, kept herself between Daniel and the door, so he couldn't leave before the police arrived. You're going to regret this, Daniel said. No, Sarah replied. You are. Vanessa was crying now, rocking slightly on the couch. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what he was planning. He said you were sick. He said we were just being prepared. Vanessa, for the love of God, stop talking, Daniel hissed. Why? So you can throw me under the bus later? So you can say I was the one who planned it? Vanessa stood up. I'm not going to prison for you. I'm not losing my son for you. Your son, Daniel said bitterly. Right, your son who isn't even mine. Sarah's head snapped up. Vanessa's face crumbled. What? Sarah said. Nothing, Daniel said quickly. No, Vanessa said, her voice hollow. No, you don't get to use that now. You knew. You knew from the beginning. Knew what? Sarah asked. Vanessa looked at her with eyes full of defeat. Ethan isn't Daniel's biological son.
I told him that before we moved in here. He said it didn't matter. He said we were building a family anyway.
Then why put his name on the birth certificate? Sarah asked. For the insurance, Vanessa whispered. For the dependent benefits. He said it would help with the claims, that it was just paperwork. Sarah understood then. All of it. The amended birth certificate. The prescription inconsistencies. The vague medical history. Daniel had used Vanessa's son as a prop to increase insurance payouts, all while planning something that would make Sarah's life insurance policy pay out too. You were going to kill me and collect both policies, Sarah said. The disability insurance you already got fraudulently, and the life insurance you took out on me. That's not true, Daniel said, but his voice lacked conviction. Then why forge medical records? Why make Vanessa think I was dying? Why take out a policy in a fake name? Sirens cut through the night outside. Daniel's face changed, panic finally breaking through the calculated calm. This is a mistake, he said. Sarah, we can work this out. We don't need police involved. Too late. 2 officers came through the door Sarah had left unlocked. She held up her wrist, already showing red marks. She played them the recording of Daniel's grab. She showed them the insurance documents. Ma'am, do you want to press charges? One officer asked. Yes, Sarah said. They arrested Daniel for assault. Not for fraud, not for conspiracy, not for any of the bigger crimes Sarah knew he'd committed. Just assault. A small charge. But it was enough to get him out of her house. As they walked him to the patrol car, he looked back at Sarah with pure hatred. This isn't over. Yes, Sarah said. It is. After they left, Vanessa sat on the couch, staring at nothing. What happens to me now? That depends, Sarah said. Are you willing to tell the truth? All of it? About what? About how long you've known Daniel. About whose idea this was. About what he promised you. Sarah sat down across from her. Because right now, you're an accomplice to insurance fraud at minimum. But if you cooperate, if you testify to what he told you, there might be a deal. He said you were sick, Vanessa repeated. He showed me papers. He said we'd wait, and when you died, we'd have enough money to give Ethan everything. A good school. A real home. I thought we were just being prepared for something inevitable. When did you realize it wasn't inevitable? Vanessa's hands twisted together. Tonight, when you said you didn't have a heart condition, that's when I knew he'd lied about everything. Not everything, Sarah said. He lied about me, but what about the rest? How did you meet him? Online. Dating app. He said he was separated, going through a divorce, that his wife was difficult and wouldn't let him see his son. He told you he had a son? Yes, he showed me pictures of a little boy, said his name was Matthew, said you'd turned the kid against him. Vanessa looked up. That was a lie too, wasn't it? There's no Matthew. No, Sarah said quietly. There's no Matthew. We never had children. Vanessa started crying harder. He used my baby. He used Ethan to run a con. What kind of person does that? The kind who commits insurance fraud and takes out life insurance on someone without their knowledge, Sarah said. The kind who's willing to do anything for money. The next morning, Sarah met with Hannah Pierce and Darius Cole in Hannah's office. She handed over the recordings, the insurance documents, everything. This is gold, Darius said. This is multiple felonies, fraud, forgery, conspiracy. And if we can prove he was planning to harm you, we're looking at attempted murder. Can you prove intent? Sarah asked. With Vanessa's testimony? Absolutely. She's the key. If she testifies that he told her about the insurance, showed her fake medical records, talked about timelines for when you'd die, that's conspiracy to commit insurance fraud at minimum. And the life insurance policy, combined with the assault, gives us enough to argue he was escalating toward violence. Hannah leaned forward.
Sarah, I need to ask you something difficult. Do you feel safe going back to that house? It's my house. I know, but he's out on bail by now, and men who get cornered get dangerous.
Sarah thought about the way Daniel had grabbed her wrist, the cold calculation in his eyes.
I'm not leaving my home.
Then we get you protection, Hannah said, and we file for an emergency restraining order. Judge will grant it based on the assault alone, but with the insurance evidence, we can make it stick long term.
What about Vanessa? Sarah asked.
She's cooperating, Darius said. I talked to her this morning. She's scared, broke, and facing the possibility of losing her kid. She'll testify to everything if it means getting a deal.
And Ethan?
Still in the hospital. They found evidence of prolonged medical neglect. He's got untreated asthma, possibly bronchitis, and signs of malnutrition. Child Services is building a case for removal. Sarah felt a pang of sympathy for the boy, despite everything.
Where will he go?
They're trying to locate his biological father, Darius said. Or he'll go into foster care temporarily.
He told me his father was in California, Sarah said. That his mom said they couldn't see him anymore.
Darius made a note. I'll follow up on that. If the father's fit, that's the best outcome for the kid. The hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for that afternoon. Sarah sat in the courtroom, watching Daniel enter with his attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who'd clearly been hired fast. When the judge called the case, Hannah stood and presented the evidence methodically. The assault, the recording, the insurance policy, the forged medical documents. Each piece laid out like cards in a winning hand. Daniel's attorney tried to argue that the insurance was a misunderstanding, that the assault was accidental, that Sarah was making mountains out of molehills. Then Hannah played the recording of Vanessa saying, "By killing her?" The courtroom went silent. The judge's expression hardened. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, "do you have an explanation for why your companion believed you were planning to kill your wife?" Daniel's attorney whispered urgently to him. Daniel shook his head. "My client maintains his innocence and invokes his Fifth Amendment right." "Of course he does," the judge said dryly. She signed the restraining order without hesitation. "Mr. Carter, you are to stay at least 500 feet from Mrs. Mitchell, her home, her workplace, and any location where she is present. Violation will result in immediate arrest. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Daniel said, his voice flat. "And Mr. Carter, I'm referring these insurance documents to the district attorney's office. You should expect additional charges." As they left the courtroom, Daniel's attorney pulled him aside for what looked like a heated conversation. Sarah watched from a distance, Hannah beside her. "He's realizing he's trapped," Hannah said quietly. "The restraining order cuts off his access to you and the house. Vanessa's cooperating. The insurance fraud is documented. His fake identity is exposed. He's got nowhere to go and no way to fix this." "Good," Sarah said. Her phone buzzed. A text from Darius. "DNA results expedited due to Child Services case. Should have them by tomorrow. Judge ordered test based on birth certificate inconsistencies." Sarah showed the message to Hannah, who smiled grimly. "When those come back negative, that's perjury and fraud on the birth certificate. Another felony." "How many are we up to?" Sarah asked. "Insurance fraud, identity theft, forgery, perjury, assault, and conspiracy. 6 so far. If the DA can prove intent to harm you for the insurance money, add attempted murder. We're looking at serious prison time." Sarah felt the weight of it settle over her. This wasn't just about her house anymore. This was about justice. About making sure Daniel faced consequences not just for what he'd done to her, but for what he'd been willing to do. That night, Sarah slept in her own bed for the first time since Daniel had returned. She'd changed the locks that afternoon, hired a security company to install new cameras, and had her father's attorney send over copies of the trust documents proving sole ownership. The house felt different now, lighter, like something poisonous had been removed and she could finally breathe. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Sarah, it's Vanessa." Her voice was small, frightened.
"I need to tell you something about Daniel's plan."
Sarah sat up. "What about it?" "There's more. Things I didn't tell the police yet because I was scared." Vanessa was crying. "But I can't sleep. I keep thinking about what could have happened to you. What he wanted to happen." "Tell me." "He had it all planned out. He said you had anxiety, that you took pills for it sometimes. He said one night, when you took too many by accident, he'd call 911, but it would be too late. He'd be the grieving husband. No one would question it." Sarah's hands went cold. "He told you this?" "Not all at once. Little pieces over time. I didn't put it together until tonight. But Sarah, he was planning to stage your suicide. Make it look like you overdosed on your anxiety medication. And he was going to do it soon. He kept saying we just needed a few more weeks, that he was building the narrative." "What narrative?" "That you were unstable, that you couldn't handle him being back, that you'd been struggling mentally. He invited your family to dinner to lay groundwork. He told people you were acting strange. He was setting it up so that when you died, everyone would say they saw it coming." Sarah felt sick. Every dinner, every comment about her being stressed or anxious or difficult, every performance for his family. It had all been building toward one horrifying conclusion. "Vanessa, you need to tell the police this. Tonight." "I know. I'm calling them after this. But I needed to tell you first. To warn you. Because, Sarah, he knows you figured it out now. And cornered animals are dangerous. He might try something desperate before the system can catch up. I have a restraining order. He can't come near me. Restraining orders are pieces of paper. They don't stop bullets. They don't stop someone desperate enough." Vanessa's voice broke. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I believed him. I'm so sorry I brought my son into this. I just wanted a better life for Ethan. I didn't know I was helping plan murder. Vanessa, call the police right now. Tell them everything. And then get yourself somewhere safe, too. If Daniel realizes you're talking, he might come after you, too." After Vanessa hung up, Sarah sat in the dark, wondering how close she'd actually come to dying. If she hadn't found that insurance letter, if she hadn't called 911 for Ethan, if she hadn't stood up for herself that first night, how long would it have been before Daniel made his move? She called Hannah, who answered on the first ring despite the late hour. "Vanessa just called me," Sarah said. "He was planning to stage my suicide, make it look like an overdose." Hannah was silent for a long moment. "That's premeditated murder. Sarah, I'm calling the DA right now, and I'm sending a patrol car to your house. You're not staying alone tonight." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You just found out your husband was planning to kill you. Nobody's fine after that." Hannah's voice softened. "Pack a bag. Go to your father's, or check into a hotel under a fake name. But don't stay in that house tonight." Sarah looked around her bedroom. The bed she'd fought to keep. The walls she'd painted herself when money was tight. The space she'd reclaimed inch by inch. "This is my home," she said. "I'm not letting him chase me out of it again." "Sarah, send the patrol car. I'll leave lights on. I've got cameras. I've got my phone. And Hannah," Sarah's voice hardened, "I've got a baseball bat and 3 years of rage. If he violates that restraining order, he's going to regret it." Hannah sighed. "You sound like your mother. She was stubborn too." "My mother survived cancer twice. I can survive Daniel Carter. Fair enough. Patrol car will be there in 20 minutes. Call me if anything feels wrong. Sarah hung up and went downstairs. She locked every door, checked every window, set the security system. Then she made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, organizing every piece of evidence into a timeline so clear even a jury would understand it. Because Daniel Carter had made one final mistake. He'd underestimated her one more time. And that was going to cost him everything. The patrol car pulled up at 11:47 p.m. Officer Jenkins was young, maybe late 20s, with a kind of alertness that came from working night shifts in a city that didn't sleep. Sarah watched him do a perimeter check from her window before she opened the door. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'll be posted outside until my shift ends at 6. Officer Ramirez will take over after that." "Thank you." "Ms. Pierce said you have cameras installed. Mind if I get access to the feed? Just so I can monitor blind spots." Sarah showed him how to access the app on his phone. He studied the coverage carefully, nodded approval. "Good setup. You've got all entry points covered. If anyone approaches the house, I'll see them before they get close." He paused. "For what it's worth, ma'am, Miss Pierce told me what you're dealing with. You did the right thing pressing charges." After he left, Sarah returned to her laptop. Her phone buzzed with an email from Darius. Subject line: expedited DNA results. She opened it with hands that wanted to shake but didn't. The genetic testing confirmed what Vanessa had admitted. Daniel Carter was not the biological father of Ethan Brooks. 0 probability of paternity. The report noted that the sample had been compared against both the child and Daniel with unambiguous results. Sarah forwarded it to Hannah with a single line: "Birth certificate fraud confirmed." The response came back immediately, despite the hour. "Got it. This adds perjury and falsification of legal documents. I'm calling the DA first thing tomorrow. Get some sleep if you can." But sleep felt impossible. Sarah made more coffee and kept working. She created a spreadsheet tracking every withdrawal from their joint account going back 4 years. The pattern was clear once you knew to look for it. Small amounts at first, gradually increasing. Then the big withdrawals started 14 months ago, right when Daniel had accessed the building with his old keycard. By 3 a.m., Sarah had documented 23 unauthorized transactions, totaling just over $60,000. Money she'd earned. Money she'd deposited thinking they were building a shared future. Money Daniel had stolen while letting her believe he was missing. Her phone rang. Unknown number again. Sarah almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Sarah Mitchell?" A man's voice, older, uncertain. "Who is this?" "My name is Marcus Webb. I got a call from Child Protective Services about my son. They said he's in the hospital in Portland. They said someone named Vanessa Brooks has been claiming he's not mine." Sarah sat up straighter. "Ethan? Is that what she's calling him? His name is Marcus Jr. I've been looking for him for 8 months." The man's voice cracked. "She took him during my custody weekend. Didn't bring him back. Changed her number. Disappeared. I filed a missing persons report, but the police said there was no evidence of kidnapping since she's his mother." "Mr. Webb, where are you right now?" "California, Sacramento. I can be in Portland by morning if someone will tell me which hospital he's in." Sarah gave him the information, then said, "Mr. Webb, I need to ask you something. Did you ever meet a man named Daniel Carter?" "No. Why?" "Because he's been claiming to be Ethan's father. He had the birth certificate amended to list his name." Silence. Then, "That's fraud. That's identity fraud on top of parental kidnapping. Jesus Christ, what has she gotten my son into?" "Mr. Webb, you need to call Child Protective Services immediately. Ask for Jennifer Ortiz. She's handling Ethan's case. And bring documentation proving paternity. birth certificate, custody agreements, anything you have." "I've got everything. I never stopped looking for him." His voice broke again.
"Is he okay? They said he was in the hospital, but they wouldn't tell me details." "He has asthma that wasn't being treated properly. He's stable now, but he needs consistent medical care." "I can give him that. I've got health insurance, a stable home, everything. I just need someone to tell me I can see my son."
After Marcus Webb hung up, Sarah sat staring at her phone. Another victim of Vanessa's cons. Another life damaged by Daniel's schemes. How many people have they hurt? By the time dawn broke, Sarah had 5 hours of evidence compiled, organized, and ready to present. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but her mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in years. At 8 a.m., Hannah called. "The DA wants to meet. Can you be at her office by 10? "I'll be there." District Attorney Patricia Chen had a corner office and a reputation for taking white-collar crime seriously. She listened without interrupting as Hannah presented the evidence, Sarah beside her, filling in details when needed. When they finished, Chen leaned back in her chair. "This is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've seen in a domestic setting. Insurance fraud, identity theft, document forgery, conspiracy to commit murder." She looked at Sarah. "Mrs. Mitchell, you've essentially built our case for us. Most victims don't think to document like this." "I had 3 years of practice surviving," Sarah said. "I learned to pay attention." Chen nodded. "I'm filing charges today, multiple felonies. With the evidence you've provided, plus Vanessa Brooks' cooperation, we have enough for convictions on at least 6 counts. The attempted murder is harder to prove without more concrete evidence of planning, but the conspiracy to commit insurance fraud is ironclad." "What about Vanessa?" Sarah asked. "She's cooperating fully. We're offering her a deal. Testimony against Carter in exchange for reduced charges and a recommendation for probation. She'll lose custody of Ethan, but she avoids prison time if she tells us everything." "And Ethan?" "Biological father has been located. He's driving in from California as we speak. If he checks out, the child goes home with him today." Hannah spoke up. "What about bail for Carter? He's out right now on the assault charge." "Not for long." Chen picked up her phone. "I'm having him picked up within the hour. With these new charges, bail gets revoked. He's too much of a flight risk." Sarah felt something unclench in her chest. "He can't come near me?" "He'll be in county lockup until trial. And Mrs. Mitchell, given the evidence of planning to harm you, I'm recommending protective custody monitoring. If he makes bail somehow, you'll be notified immediately." The arraignment happened fast. Sarah sat in the courtroom gallery, watching Daniel shuffle in wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs. His expensive attorney looked uncomfortable as the charges were read aloud. Count 1, insurance fraud. Count 2, identity theft. Count 3, forgery. Count 4, perjury. Count 5, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. Count 6, assault. Count 7, falsification of medical documents. With each count, Daniel's face got grayer. "How does your client plead?" the judge asked. Daniel's attorney stood. "Not guilty on all counts, Your Honor." Given the severity of these charges and evidence that Mr. Carter has already committed identity fraud and has lived under an assumed name, the state requests remand without bail. Daniel's attorney argued for bail, citing his client's ties to the community, but the judge cut him off. Mr. Carter has demonstrated a willingness to forge documents, steal identities, and defraud insurance companies. He poses a substantial flight risk. Bail is denied. Trial date set for 60 days from today. Daniel turned and found Sarah in the courtroom. The hatred in his eyes was pure and undiluted. She met his gaze without flinching. She'd spent 3 years afraid of what happened to him. She'd spent the last week afraid of what he might do to her. She was done being afraid. Outside the courthouse, a man approached Sarah hesitantly. Early 40s, wearing jeans and a work shirt, eyes red from crying. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm Marcus Webb." "Mr. Webb, did you see Ethan?" "I did. He knew me right away, started crying and wouldn't let go." Marcus's voice broke. "They're releasing him to me this afternoon. Child Services confirmed custody, and I've got a court order. But I needed to thank you. The caseworker said you were the one who called 911 when he couldn't breathe." "I just did what anyone would do." "No." Marcus shook his head firmly. "Most people look the other way. You saved my son's life, and you helped me find him. I don't know how to repay that. Take care of him. Get him proper treatment for his asthma. That's all the repayment I need." Marcus pulled an envelope from his pocket. "I wrote down everything I know about Vanessa. Dates, places, things she said. I figure it might help your case against the guy who helped her take my son." Sarah took the envelope. "Thank you. Also, there's something else you should know. Vanessa tried this with another guy before me, a man named Thomas Price in Seattle. She told him she was pregnant with his kid, moved in with him, then disappeared with a bunch of his money. I got in touch with him after she took Marcus. We compared stories. Her pattern is always the same. Find a vulnerable man, create a crisis, extract money, disappear." "Did Thomas Price file charges?" "He tried, but she was gone before the police took it seriously. I've got his contact information in there too. He might be willing to testify about her pattern of behavior." After Marcus left, Sarah handed the envelope to Hannah. "This keeps getting bigger," Hannah said. "Vanessa's not just an accomplice, she's a serial con artist. And Daniel's not just a fraudster, he's a predator who found another predator, and they teamed up. Can we use this at trial?" "Absolutely. Pattern evidence shows this wasn't an isolated incident or a mistake. This was systematic fraud by two people who knew exactly what they were doing." The preliminary hearing, 3 weeks later, was standing room only. Daniel's case had made the news after a reporter dug into the insurance fraud and found the attempted murder angle. "Local man arrested for alleged plot to kill wife for insurance money," ran in the Oregonian. By the second day of coverage, TV crews were camped outside the courthouse. Sarah sat in the front row with her father on one side and Hannah on the other. Darius had prepared her testimony meticulously. "Don't volunteer information. Answer only what's asked. Stay calm. Let the evidence speak." The prosecution called Vanessa Brooks first. She looked smaller than Sarah remembered, worn down by weeks of interrogation and the knowledge of what she'd helped facilitate. Her testimony was damning. "He showed me medical records," Vanessa said quietly. "Documents that said Sarah had a heart valve defect. He said she could die any time, that it was just a matter of when. He said we needed to be ready." "Ready how?" the prosecutor asked. "Ready to collect the insurance money. Ready to move forward with our lives after she was gone." "Did he ever explicitly discuss harming Mrs. Mitchell?" Vanessa's hands twisted in her lap. "He said accidents happen, that anxiety medication could be dangerous if someone took too much, that it would look natural given her medical history." "What medical history?" "The heart problem. Except there was no heart problem. The documents were fake. I didn't know that until later." Daniel's attorney tried to cross-examine her, tried to paint her as an unreliable witness with a history of fraud herself, but the prosecutor had prepared for that. "Ms. Brooks has cooperated fully with this investigation," the prosecutor said. "She's provided testimony, documents, and corroborating evidence. Yes, she has a criminal history. But that doesn't change the facts of what Mr. Carter did." The insurance investigator testified next. Thomas Price, the man Marcus Webb had mentioned, took the stand and described how Vanessa had conned him 3 years earlier using almost identical methods. She told me she was pregnant, moved in with me, started asking about my insurance policies, my assets. Then one day I came home and she was gone. So was $12,000 from my savings account. Did you ever meet Daniel Carter? No, but I saw his picture in the news. He looks familiar. I think I saw him outside my apartment once when Vanessa was living with me. At the time, I thought he was just some guy walking by. Now I wonder if he was watching, planning the next con. The evidence mounted steadily. Bank records showing Daniel's withdrawals, the fake medical documents, the insurance policy taken out under a false name, the amended birth certificate, the rental agreements under Marcus Thompson's identity. Sarah testified on the fourth day of the hearing. She spoke clearly and calmly, walking the prosecutor through the timeline. Daniel's disappearance, the years of struggling alone, his sudden return with Vanessa and Ethan, the discovery of the hospital badge, the insurance policy, the life insurance letter, the recordings of his threats. Mrs. Mitchell, did you at any time consent to your husband taking out life insurance on you? No, I never knew about it until I found the letter in my old mail. And when you discovered it, what did you think? I thought he was planning to kill me. Daniel's attorney objected. Speculation, Your Honor. Sustained. The jury will disregard that statement. But the damage was done. Sarah saw several jurors looking at Daniel with disgust. On cross-examination, Daniel's attorney tried to attack her credibility. Mrs. Mitchell, you admit to having anxiety, correct? You've sought treatment for mental health issues. I saw a therapist after my husband disappeared. That's not unusual. It's called taking care of yourself. And isn't it true that you've been hostile toward Mr. Carter since his return? That you refuse to cooperate with reasonable living arrangements? Reasonable living arrangements would have involved asking my permission before moving someone else into my home. That didn't happen. You seem very calm for someone who claims her husband was planning to murder her. Sarah looked directly at the jury. I spent 3 years learning to survive alone. You don't do that by falling apart. You do it by staying focused and paying attention. So yes, I'm calm. But that doesn't mean I'm not telling the truth. The attorney had no response to that. During a recess, Sarah's father pulled her aside. You're doing great, Robert said. Your mother would be proud. I wish she was here. She is. She taught you to stand up for yourself. I see her in you right now. The afternoon session brought a surprise witness, an insurance investigator from Pacific Life, the company that had issued the policy on Sarah's life. We've been investigating Mr. Carter's claims for several months, the investigator testified. This isn't the first fraudulent policy he's attempted. We found 2 others, one in Arizona 4 years ago, one in Nevada 6 years ago. Both times he filed claims under false pretenses. Both times he disappeared before we could prosecute. Sarah felt her breath catch. This wasn't just about her. Daniel had done this before. Were there other victims? The prosecutor asked. 2 that we've identified. One woman in Arizona whose husband Daniel befriended and then attempted to defraud. One man in Nevada whose identity Daniel stole to file a false disability claim. We're still investigating whether there are more. Daniel's attorney was on his feet. Objection! This is prejudicial and not relevant to the current case. Your Honor, it establishes a pattern of behavior, the prosecutor argued. It shows this wasn't an isolated incident, but rather a systematic scheme of fraud. I'll allow it, the judge ruled. The investigator continued. In both previous cases, Mr. Carter used similar methods. Fake medical documents, forged signatures, false identities. He's sophisticated in his approach and has evaded prosecution until now by moving frequently and covering his tracks. By the time the preliminary hearing ended, Daniel's defense was in tatters. The judge found probable cause on all counts and ordered him held for trial. As they led him out of the courtroom, Daniel tried one more time to catch Sarah's eye. But she was already walking away, her father's arm around her shoulders, heading toward a future that finally felt like it belonged to her again. Outside, reporters swarmed them. Hannah fielded the questions smoothly, while Sarah and Robert moved toward his car. "Mrs. Mitchell, how does it feel knowing your husband tried to kill you?" Sarah stopped, turned, looked directly at the camera. "It feels like I survived," she said. "And he didn't win." That night, Sarah returned to her house alone for the first time in weeks without fear. She'd changed the locks, installed new cameras, updated the security system. But more than that, she'd changed inside. The woman who'd opened the door at midnight to find Daniel standing there was gone. Someone stronger had taken her place. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan, sent from Marcus Webb's phone. "Thank you for helping me breathe. Love, Ethan." Below it, a photo. Ethan with an inhaler, smiling, his father's hand on his shoulder. Safe, healthy, home. Sarah saved the photo and sent back a simple message. "Be good, be happy. You deserve both." Then she poured herself a glass of wine, sat on her couch in her house that was finally, completely, legally hers, and let herself feel what she'd been holding back for weeks. Relief, anger, grief for the years stolen from her, pride for the strength it had taken to fight back. But mostly she felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Safe. And that was worth everything the fight had cost. The trial started on a Monday morning in October. Sarah woke at 5, unable to sleep, and made coffee while watching the sunrise through her kitchen window. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from reporters. She ignored all of them. By 8, she was dressed and ready. Hannah had coached her extensively on courtroom demeanor. Stay calm. Don't react to Daniel's attorney. Don't look at Daniel unless you're testifying. Let the evidence speak. The courtroom was packed. Sarah recognized some faces from the preliminary hearing, but there were new people too. Reporters. True crime enthusiasts. People who'd read the stories and wanted to see the man who'd planned his wife's murder for insurance money. Daniel was already seated when Sarah entered. He'd lost weight during his weeks in county lockup. His suit hung loose on his frame, and his eyes had a hollow quality that might have looked like remorse to someone who didn't know better. But Sarah saw the calculation behind it. He was performing again, playing the role of wronged husband, hoping for sympathy. Their eyes met for just a second. Daniel's mouth moved like he wanted to say something, but his attorney's hand on his arm stopped him. The judge entered, and everyone stood. Judge Patricia Morrison had silver hair and the kind of face that had seen every con, every lie, every desperate plea. She wasn't impressed by performance. "The state of Oregon versus Daniel Marcus Carter," the clerk announced. "Charges of insurance fraud, identity theft, forgery, perjury, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, assault, and falsification of medical documents." The prosecutor, James Riley, stood for his opening statement. He was methodical, building the case piece by piece, like he was constructing a wall Daniel couldn't climb over. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over the next several days you're going to hear about a man who disappeared for 3 years. Not because he was lost, but because he was planning. Planning to assume a false identity. Planning to commit insurance fraud. Planning to return to his wife's home and systematically steal everything she'd fought to keep. And planning, ultimately, to kill her and collect $300,000 in life insurance. Daniel's attorney objected. "Your Honor, there's no evidence of an actual murder attempt." "There's evidence of planning," Riley countered. "Of forged medical documents designed to make the victim appear terminally ill. Of statements to a co-conspirator about staging a suicide, of a life insurance policy taken out without the victim's knowledge or consent. That's conspiracy to commit murder. Judge Morrison considered. I'll allow the conspiracy charge to be argued. The jury will decide if the evidence supports it. Continue, Mr. Riley. Thank you, Your Honor. Riley turned back to the jury. The evidence you'll see isn't circumstantial. It's documented. Bank records, recordings, forged documents, insurance policies, and testimony from multiple witnesses who will tell you exactly what Daniel Carter planned to do and how close he came to doing it. He paused, letting that sink in. The defense will try to tell you this was a misunderstanding, that Mr. Carter made mistakes but meant no harm. But ladies and gentlemen, insurance fraud isn't a mistake. Forging your wife's signature on a life insurance policy isn't a mistake. Telling your accomplice to make it look like an overdose isn't a mistake. Those are choices. Calculated, deliberate choices. And Daniel Carter made every single one of them. The first day of testimony was brutal. The insurance investigator walked the jury through every fraudulent claim Daniel had ever filed, going back 7 years. Arizona, Nevada, Washington, Oregon. 4 states, 6 false identities, and estimated $200,000 in fraudulent claims. Would you say Mr. Carter is sophisticated in his methods? Riley asked. Extremely. He knows how to exploit system weaknesses, how to time his claims, how to disappear before investigations close in. This isn't amateur hour. This is professional fraud. Daniel's attorney tried to poke holes during cross-examination. Isn't it true that Mr. Carter was never convicted of any of these alleged previous frauds? That's correct. He always disappeared before prosecution could proceed. So these are allegations, not proven facts. They're documented patterns that show a history of identical behavior. The jury can decide what that means. On day 2, Vanessa Brooks took the stand again. This time with no deal protecting her, just an agreement to testify truthfully in exchange for the prosecution's recommendation of leniency. Ms. Brooks, did you love Daniel Carter? Riley asked. Vanessa's voice was barely audible. I thought I did. Now I think I just loved what he promised me. And what did he promise? Security, a home, a future for my son. She looked at the jury. He told me Sarah was dying, that she had months, maybe a year, that we just needed to wait and then we'd have everything. The house, the insurance money, a fresh start. Did he ever discuss harming Sarah Mitchell? Vanessa's hands gripped the witness box. He said anxiety medication could be dangerous, that people with heart conditions sometimes took too many pills accidentally, that it wouldn't look suspicious given her medical history. What medical history? The fake one, the forged documents he showed me. I believed them because I wanted to believe them, because I needed the money for Ethan's medical bills. And Daniel said this was the answer. Her voice broke. I'm not making excuses. I knew it was wrong. I just didn't know how wrong until Sarah found that insurance letter. That's when I realized he'd been lying to me, too. Lying how? About Sarah being sick, about the timeline, about everything. He was planning to kill her and frame it as suicide, and I was supposed to back up his story about her being unstable. I was his alibi, and I almost gave it to him. Daniel's attorney tried to destroy her credibility on cross-examination, but Vanessa held firm. Yes, she had a criminal history. Yes, she'd conned men before. Yes, she'd kidnapped her own son from his father. But that didn't change what Daniel had planned. You're testifying to save yourself, the attorney accused. I'm testifying because a woman almost died, and I helped set it up, Vanessa shot back. You can believe whatever you want about my motives. The facts don't change. On day 3, Sarah took the stand again, this time for the jury, not just the preliminary hearing. Riley walked her through the entire timeline one more time, letting the jury see how the evidence fit together. Mrs. Mitchell, when you found the insurance policy, what went through your mind? Fear. Then clarity. Everything suddenly made sense. Why he came back, why he wanted me to sign papers, why he was telling people I was unstable. He was building a narrative that would explain my death. And you recorded several conversations with Mr. Carter after that discovery, correct? Yes. Washington law allows recording when you feel threatened. I felt very threatened. Riley played one of the recordings for the jury. Daniel's voice filled the courtroom. You think a lawyer scares me? You think I didn't prepare for this? Prepare for what? Sarah's recorded voice asked. For you being difficult, for you playing victim, for you trying to take what's mine. Several jurors leaned forward. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a man who'd planned everything and gotten caught. On cross-examination, Daniel's attorney went for broke. Mrs. Mitchell, isn't it true that you hated your husband for leaving? No, I was hurt. Then I moved on. Moved on? You kept his last name. You kept photos of him displayed. Does that sound like moving on? I kept my last name because changing it costs money I didn't have. I kept photos because taking them down felt like admitting he was dead. That's called hope, not hatred. Hope or obsession? Sarah's voice stayed level. I filed a missing persons report. I called hospitals. I did what any spouse would do. When he didn't come back, I survived without him. There's nothing obsessive about that. But you did want revenge when he returned, didn't you? No, I wanted answers. I wanted the truth. What I got was a man trying to steal my house and my life. So yes, I fought back. That's not revenge. That's self-defense. The attorney had no response to that. On day 4, Riley called a surprise witness, a woman named Jennifer Morrison from Daniel's past. Ms. Morrison, how do you know Daniel Carter? I was married to him 14 years ago, for about 8 months before he disappeared. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Morrison gavelled for silence. He disappeared before? Yes. Took out a loan using my Social Security number, cleaned out my savings account, then just vanished. I tried to find him, but he'd covered his tracks too well. I eventually got divorced in absentia and rebuilt my life. Then I saw his face in the news and recognized him immediately. Did Mr. Carter ever mention life insurance during your marriage? Constantly. He wanted me to increase my policy, said we needed to be prepared. I kept saying no because something felt wrong about how insistent he was. 3 weeks before he disappeared, I caught him forging my signature on an insurance application. That's when I told him I wanted a divorce. The next day, he was gone. Daniel's face had gone gray. His attorney was whispering urgently, but Daniel wasn't responding. Ms. Morrison, in your opinion, was Daniel Carter planning to kill you for insurance money? Objection, Daniel's attorney shouted. I'll rephrase, Riley said smoothly. Ms. Morrison, why do you think Daniel Carter was so interested in increasing your life insurance? Because I was worth more dead than alive to him, just like Sarah Mitchell. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Sarah sat in the hallway with Hannah and her father, unable to eat, barely able to breathe. 6 hours felt like 6 days. When the clerk finally called them back, Sarah's hands were shaking. She folded them in her lap and made herself breathe slowly as the jury filed in. None of them looked at Daniel. That was usually a bad sign for the defense. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked. We have, Your Honor. The forewoman stood, an older black woman with kind eyes and steel in her spine. On count 1, insurance fraud, how do you find? Guilty. Daniel's shoulders slumped. On count 2, identity theft? Guilty. Sarah felt her father's hand find hers. On count 3, forgery. Guilty. One by one, the guilty verdicts came. 7 counts. 7 guilty verdicts. By the time the forewoman finished, Daniel was staring at the table, his attorney's hand on his shoulder, looking like a man watching his life collapse in real time. And on the additional count of conspiracy to commit insurance fraud? Guilty. The courtroom exhaled as one. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your service, Judge Morrison said. Mr. Carter, you will remain in custody pending sentencing. We're adjourned. As the bailiff approached Daniel, he suddenly stood and turned toward Sarah. This is your fault, he shouted. You couldn't just cooperate. You had to ruin everything. 2 bailiffs grabbed him before he could move toward her. Daniel fought against them, still shouting. I gave you everything. I came back. You should have been grateful. Mr. Carter, you will be silent or you will be removed, Judge Morrison ordered. But Daniel kept shouting as they dragged him toward the door. You think you won? You think this is over? You'll regret this, Sarah. You'll... The door closed on his threats. Sarah sat very still, her hands folded, her face calm. Inside, something was cracking open, but she wouldn't let it show. Not here. Not now. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Hannah handled them while Sarah and her father got to the car. Only when they were driving away did Sarah let herself cry. Not from fear, not from relief, just from the sheer exhaustion of fighting for so long. It's over, Robert said quietly. Not yet. There's still sentencing. Then after that. After that, Sarah agreed. Sentencing came 3 weeks later. The courtroom was less packed this time. The spectacle was over. Now came the reckoning. Daniel wore handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. No expensive suit this time. No performance. Just a man facing consequences. Judge Morrison reviewed the charges, the evidence, the impact statements. Sarah had written hers carefully, trying to capture what the past months had cost her without sounding vindictive. Mr. Carter, Judge Morrison said, you systematically defrauded multiple people across multiple states over multiple years. You forged documents. You stole identities. You exploited insurance systems. And you planned to murder your wife for financial gain. These are not crimes of passion or desperation. These are crimes of calculation and greed. She paused. I've read Mrs. Mitchell's impact statement. I've reviewed the evidence. And I've considered the recommendations from both the prosecution and defense. Mr. Carter, I find that you pose a significant danger to anyone who stands between you and money. I find that you lack remorse, as evidenced by your outburst at verdict. And I find that substantial incarceration is necessary to protect the public. Sarah held her breath. On count 1, insurance fraud, I sentence you to 5 years. On count 2, identity theft, 5 years. On count 3, forgery, 3 years. On counts 4 through 7, 2 years each. These sentences will run consecutively, not concurrently. Total sentence, 24 years in Oregon State Prison. You'll be eligible for parole in 16 years, provided you demonstrate genuine rehabilitation. Daniel's face crumpled. 24 years. He'd be in his 60s before he could even apply for parole. Do you have anything to say, Mr. Carter? Judge Morrison asked. Daniel stood slowly. For a moment, Sarah thought he might apologize, might show some sign of understanding what he'd done. Instead, he turned to her. I hope you're happy. I hope this house was worth it. I hope you sleep well, knowing you put me here." Sarah met his eyes. "I sleep fine." Daniel's attorney pulled him back down, whispering urgently. But the damage was done. No remorse. No acknowledgement. Just blame. "We're adjourned," Judge Morrison said. "Mr. Carter will be transferred to state custody immediately." As they led Daniel away, he didn't look back. Sarah watched him go, feeling nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief, just a quiet sense of finality. It was over. A week later, Sarah stood in her living room with boxes spread across the floor. Not moving boxes, donation boxes. She was clearing out everything that reminded her of Daniel. His books, his old jacket still hanging in the hall closet, wedding photos she'd kept out of hope, then out of evidence necessity. Now they were just garbage. Her phone rang. Work. Her boss, Catherine Martinez. "Sarah, I need you to come in Monday for a meeting." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "Actually, quite the opposite. We're expanding the senior architect team. Your name came up. We'd like to talk to you about a promotion." Sarah sat down slowly. "A promotion?" "You've handled everything this year with remarkable professionalism. You didn't miss deadlines. You didn't let personal issues affect your work quality. That's the kind of reliability we want in leadership. Interested?" "Yes, absolutely yes." "Good. Monday at 10. And Sarah, I'm sorry for everything you went through, but I'm glad you fought back." After hanging up, Sarah walked through her house slowly. The master bedroom that was finally just hers. The kitchen where she'd confronted Daniel. The living room where she'd built her case. This house had been a burden for 3 years, then a battlefield for 3 weeks. Now it was just home again. Her doorbell rang. Sarah opened it to find a courier with an envelope. "Sarah Mitchell? This is registered mail from Oregon State Penitentiary." Sarah signed for it, knowing what it was before she opened it. A letter from Daniel. She stood in her entryway holding the envelope, debating. She could burn it, throw it away, refuse to give him even one more moment of her attention. Or she could read it and have the last word he'd never hear. She opened it. The letter was short. "Sarah, I know you won't forgive me. I'm not asking for that. I'm writing because I need you to understand something. I didn't plan to hurt you at first. When I left 3 years ago, I was running from debt, from failure, from myself. Meeting Vanessa was an accident. The insurance stuff started small, just trying to survive. But then it became a game. How much could I take? How far could I push before anyone noticed? And you never noticed. For 3 years you just kept surviving, kept paying bills, kept living your little life. You made it so easy to think you'd never fight back. That's why I came back, because I thought you were weak. I was wrong. You're not weak. You're just quiet. And that's more dangerous than I realized. I'm in here because I underestimated you. Don't ever let anyone else make that mistake. Daniel." Sarah read it twice, then took it to the kitchen sink. She held a match to the corner and watched it burn, smoke curling toward the ceiling. The ashes fell into the sink, and she washed them down the drain. That was closure. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just the end of his ability to take anything more from her. 2 months later, Sarah accepted her promotion. She bought new furniture for the house, replacing pieces that carried memories she didn't want anymore. She started therapy again. Not because she was unstable, but because unpacking trauma took work. She went on a date with someone from her gym, and it didn't go anywhere. But that was okay. She was relearning how to trust, slowly. One afternoon, she got a text from Marcus Webb with a photo attached. Ethan blowing out birthday candles, healthy and happy, his father's arm around him. He asks about you sometimes. Says you're the nice lady who helped him breathe. Just wanted to say thank you again. You gave me my son back. Sarah saved the photo and felt something warm in her chest. Not all the damage from Daniel's cons could be undone, but some of it could heal. On the anniversary of the night Daniel had shown up at her door, Sarah invited her father over for dinner. They sat at the table where Daniel had dropped papers demanding her signature, now cleared of everything but food and conversation. "You did it," Robert said. "You survived him twice. Once when he left, once when he came back. I did more than survive. I won." "Your mother would have said the same thing." Sarah raised her glass. "To Mom, and to women who refuse to stay quiet." Robert clinked his glass against hers. "To women who refuse to stay quiet." Later that night, Sarah sat on her couch in the quiet house, laptop open, working on a design project that excited her in ways work hadn't in years. Her phone sat silent. Her doors were locked. Her life was her own again. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, opening the door to find Daniel standing there with claims and demands and plans that would have destroyed her if she'd bent. She thought about the woman she'd become, who documented evidence and built a case and stood in front of a jury and said clearly, calmly, without apology, "This is what he did, and this is why it matters." Those weren't the same woman, and Sarah was okay with that. Growth didn't always look like healing. Sometimes it looked like armor. Sometimes it looked like knowing your worth and defending it without explanation. Sarah closed her laptop and turned off the lights. She climbed the stairs to her bedroom, the one she'd fought 3 years to keep and 3 weeks to reclaim, and slid into bed feeling something she'd almost forgotten. Peace. Daniel Carter had come back planning to take everything, her home, her money, her life. He'd failed on all counts, and now he'd spend the next 16 to 24 years learning what Sarah had known all along. Silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. Patience wasn't surrender. It was preparation. And women who survived alone didn't break when someone tried to break them. They built cases. They gathered evidence. They stood firm. And they won.